An introduction to structuring. So structuring is quite a general term. What we're really talking about here is the creation of securities which change the nature of cash flows. Maybe you've got some assets here and they're generating some cash flows. What we're going to do through these securities, maybe there's different types of securities, different tranches. We're going to change the nature of the cash flows. Maybe the ones coming through this tranche here are safer from a certain risk perspective than other cash flows flowing through this tranche here. And maybe there'll be different required returns for these different tranches of securities. So that's just a general idea of what's going on with structuring. We're changing the nature of cash flows to suit investors' needs. Presumably some investors prefer the safer cash flows. Some investors actually prefer the riskier cash flows where they'd be expected to generate higher returns. So we're going to formalize, or if you like, we're going to formally state that this structuring process has the goal of creating securities for lots of different investors, what's referred to as completing the market. So we'll formally state that to start this reading. I've rather spoiled that bullet point. And then we'll look at some structured products. In particular, we're going to focus on collateralized mortgage obligations, different types of those. They're structured products where the assets, which is often referred to, the assets are often referred to as the collateral. The assets are mortgage-related assets. In other words, they're mortgage loans, and the cash flows are cash flows coming back from mortgage borrowers, and we're creating securities to pass those cash flows through to investors in different ways. So we're going to look at CMOs, we're going to look at sequential pay, very acronym heavy because you can create these different slices, these different tranches in different ways. And we're going to talk generally about why CDOs, more generally collateralized debt obligations, why they're created, how they're structured, how they're managed, and whether they are funded or unfunded at the investor level. So there's lots of jargon here, so make sure you get behind the rationale for these things existing. That would be my recommendation with this material. So I've already said that structuring is the creation of securities that changes the nature of cash flows. It creates claims on some underlying assets, or it creates a payoff, and it changes the structuring process, changes the risk, maybe the tax status, maybe the liquidity attributes of the underlying asset pool. Certainly, one of the key motivations to creating collateralized debt obligations, as we'll see, is that these securities trade a lot more actively and are a lot more liquid than the illiquid underlying loans in the collateral pool, for example. All right. It could be the case that the securities that are created are treated differently from a tax perspective. It could even be the case that the structure itself reinvests income, so no income goes back to investors. Therefore, all tax is capital gains. That sort of thing. You tend to see that thing in that type of idea just in general fund structures, but you see it also in these structured products as well. So the major types of structured products, or the major type of structuring we're going to look at, you could argue that credit derivatives, which give the ability to pass credit risk from one party to another and have payoffs deemed on credit events, that's a type of structuring. But we're going to focus here on CDO tranching. This is where we're creating securities which pass through cash flows on some underlying debt pool, and they change the nature of the cash flows. We're going to focus on those.